Welcome back to the Banderpod, the pinned and poignant podcast of Bandersnatch Books. We're a small press publisher of treasures found off the beaten path for lovers of all that is good, true, and beautiful. I'm Rachel S. Donahue, and today I'm talking with poet and author Kelly D. Belmonte about poetry as a means of hospitality. Kelly is the author of our upcoming release, a collection of poetry titled The Mother of All Words. Kelly Belmonte, welcome to the Banderpod.
Thank you, Rachel. So good to be here.
Yeah, I'm so glad we get to have this conversation. All right, so to begin, can you introduce yourself and, tell a little bit about your upcoming collection, The Mother of All Words?
Sure. So Kelly Belmonte, and I live in York, Maine, originally from upstate New York, but I came out this way after I went to school in Massachusetts and met my husband, and he's from here. So we eventually made our way up here. So here I am. And little side note, we had an earthquake here on Monday, which was really exciting.
Wow.
No damage, but
Well, thank goodness.
Yeah, because we don't have a lot of earthquakes. So it was exciting, but
Yeah.
to be here
Wow.
in York, Maine, where it was the epicenter. So
Epicenter. Oh my goodness.
I know.
That is crazy.
I know. Who would have thought York, Maine would have been the epicenter of anything, but I mean, other than vacation land, whatever.
Right.
Anyway, this collection that's coming up, The Mother of All Words, I'm so excited. Bandersnatch snatched it up.
So are we.
Yeah. Yay. So the poems in this collection are really my attempt to wrestle with and rest with the beautiful and the broken in this world and the overlap of both of those.
Yeah.
And I would say this collection is my way to love a world that is sometimes hard to love, but also really quite spectacular at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like you do a really good job treading that middle space of grief and beauty and all of it together, just holding it and sitting in it and recognizing all of it and taking it all of it together. I love how you hold that tension in the breadth of the poems. There's beauty, there's wrestling with hard things, but there's this thread of beauty that just runs through the whole thing. So in the introduction to your book, you talk about the importance of food to your family as a means of hospitality. Explain what that has to do with your poetry.
Yeah, so food is just so elemental. I mean, you think about it, it's funny how Jesus said to remember him through food, by, when you eat the bread, when you drink the wine. It connects us with memory, and it connects us with really all our senses, with, taste, smell, touch. And it creates, I guess, a safe way to be vulnerable. So I think in a similar way, poetry does that.
Yeah, no, that's good.
And, so there are a few poems throughout that really focus on that. Like, for example, Zucchini Justice. It ends with, take a zucchini, please. Or in Life Imperfect, pass him a cup of warmed over coffee. It's sort of, but I did notice in, just in preparing for this conversation with you and reading through the collection again, it's been a while, but there are quite a few that mention different kinds of food. So yeah, like day labor, last night's party, zucchini justice.
Yeah.
And like with zucchini justice, take this, have a zucchini, please. I can't fix all of these other things that are going on in your life or in the world, but how about a poem?
That's right.
Right. Yeah. How about a zucchini or whatever? So whatever I can do, it's a way of bridging a gap that I can't fill myself. So, my family just loves food. So it's just, we're all in, my extended family, we all have our own little ways of doing food.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's really good. Now, I have a quote from Madeline L'Engle here. I know you have a found poem that was found in one of her books, Walking on Water. And so I feel like this quote is kind of relevant to the whole body of work. To paint a picture or to write a story or to compose a song is an incarnational activity. The artist is a servant who is willing to be a birth giver. In a very real sense, the artist, male or female, should be like Mary, who, when the angel told her that she was to bear the Messiah, was obedient to the command. Obedience is an unpopular word nowadays, but the artist must be obedient to the work. Whether it be a symphony, a painting, or a story for a small child, I believe that each work of art, whether it is a work of great genius or something very small, comes to the artist and says, "Here I am, enflesh me, give birth to me."
Mm.
That feels really relevant, especially with the title of your collection, The Mother of All Words. And this is not a collection of poetry specifically about motherhood,
Right.
but it definitely has that motherly, nurturing tone to
Mm.
it that just feels like grace
Mm.
to the people who are receiving it. Would you mind reading that title poem for us?
Sure, I'd be delighted. The mother of all words. That time, the second largest word, hate, slammed clumsy sideways into that forgotten box of once essentials left for dust in the corner next to the attic stairs. Physics and nature and chance being what they are, and over tip goes the box, and what should roll, bounce, flop out but the mother of all words, love. Remember me? But more statement than question. No rancor, no accusation, but acceptance that what is born out of love does not always take the path of least resistance. And with resistance comes friction, pain, sometimes hostility, maybe even hate, but never indifference. And when there is still enough heat and light to generate hate, there's still hope of melting hearts and changing minds, turning and returning to love.
Mm, that is so good. I particularly love that line that what is born out of love does not always take the path of least
Mm.
resistance. And I mean, that if that's not motherhood in a
Yeah,
nutshell,
yeah,
I don't know what is.
yeah,
But also, it is being an author, it is being a poet, an artist. It's that the striving, the serving, the work, it's and also loving other
yeah.
people because people are not always easy to
No,
love.
no, they're not.
But I mean, that's where grace comes in. So like the art overarching theme of this collection is love, but there's definitely a subtext of grace.
Mm,
So can you talk about that a little bit? Like how those ideas are interrelated?
yeah. There's really so much that is amazing and beautiful in life that we did nothing to deserve, but it was God's good pleasure to create and give it to us and say, enjoy, because He loves us. And that's grace.
Hmm.
And it's that
Yeah.
kind of grace that can melt hearts. So, there are other kinds of grace. The poem "It's About Time" is one of the more autobiographical ones in this collection, and I spend most of the poem beating myself up for not being prepared to send my son off to college to launch an almost adult human into an overripe world, as I write in the poem. By the end, though, I finally cut myself some slack.
Hmm.
It's about time I wrap this up and send it to my younger self with a note that says something like, "You'll never get used to it. You never had to."
Hmm.
And that also is grace.
Yeah.
And I think we need more of it in our relationships and also toward ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And and you obviously have received that grace yourself. And in receiving that, you are then able to turn and extend that to other people. Freely you have received, freely give. And I
Mhm.
love that you do such a good job of that in this collection of offering just in hospitality. Like there's just such a warmth and a welcoming. And yet you're not writing flowery things. The like you are wrestling with some really difficult things in some of these poems. A
Yeah,
massacre in a gymnasium
yeah,
or the bombing at the Boston Marathon. And these are hard things, and yet you don't look away from them. You don't shy away from them. You, in love, find a way to fill the gap and say, here, I don't have an answer, but I have this poem. I
yeah,
have
yeah, yeah.
what little thing I can offer. There's just something very beautiful about that.
Mm.
So you are a mom in real life. You were talking about your son. And I definitely think that that lends itself to that motherly tone, that nurturing tone in your poetry. Can you talk about motherhood as it relates to unconditional love and hospitality and the influence that that's had on your poetry?
I will start out by saying that the inspiration for the title poem was a little ironic in a sense. So you may recall, and I've actually heard it in the news again recently, but the Moab, do you remember that? The
Mm.
mother of all bombs.
Mm-hmm.
And when I first heard that in the news a few years ago, I was like, mother bombs, this feels weird to me. And it got me thinking about that phrase, mother of all,
Mm.
describing something that is quite epic, like beyond all others. And which made me think of mother in a much fiercer way
Mm.
when looking at that word,
Yeah.
and also looking at love as the most powerful and fierce and epic thing that there is. So, with that context, I've been thinking a lot lately about what C.S. Lewis said in Mere Christianity about badness, and that badness is only spoiled goodness.
Mm.
And there must be something good first before it can be spoiled.
Yeah.
So the word spoiled makes me think of a spoiled child. And you can't have a spoiled child without someone else, the parent or the mother in this case, doing the spoiling. So as a mom, you have to have that kind of nurturing fierceness and a willingness to say and do the hard things and the soft and gentle and kind things that will ultimately nurture the goodness and keep away the spoilage.
Yeah.
A bit of pruning here, a bit of watering there. And it's that unconditional love that gives a parent the eyes to see the potential of the child for good and for evil, and the
Mm.
will to actively nurture the current version of that child towards the good, the
Mm.
virtue, the
Right.
good, the beautiful, the true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It takes a lot of patience sometimes.
Mm, indeed. Indeed. As you well know.
It is not a short yeah, it is not a short work. It is a long, constant posture, I think, of loving and being inconvenienced for love's sake, I think. And speaking of which, that reminds me of a quote. I've been listening to Ben Palpant's Letters from the Mountain on audiobook lately. And today, as I was driving, he quoted Francois Mauriac, I believe is how he says his name, and says he believed that God does not treat poets as he does the rest of humanity. He noted that for poets, everything happens as if it were tailor-made for them, and they are to give an account, a testimony that they alone can give, as if their lives were specially built to say what they are meant to say. I think he's correct. Poets have tailor-made experiences that equip them for a particular kind of writing. I would say, in this case, motherhood. Your life experience is creativity's soil, but other people's suffering can also provide grounding for your writing. Their loss, grief, and pain may generate profound thoughts in you, visions of the divine that you were meant to share with the world. You don't have to experience all of humanity's trouble firsthand to be an effective writer. All you need is empathy. That's just so powerful. And I was thinking about that kind of in the context of what motherhood has done for you in this collection. Would you talk a little bit about how this collection came to be? I know some of it had to do with pandemic era and things. It's just kind of unpack that, like explain to our listeners kind of what shaped the arc and the gathering of these poems.
Yeah. Something that comes to mind after you just read that, I have this little quote on my next to my desk on a little sticky note by Madeline L'Engle.
Oh, wonderful.
It has to be said by me.
Mm.
I think we all, especially poets, I mean, I can't speak for all of the world, but I know as poets, we have a certain lens we're looking through, and those things can only be said by us, by me, that because that's my lens.
Yeah.
But in terms of this particular collection, it really started coming together quite a while ago. I mean, at least where are we? We're in 2025 now. I mean, it's like 5 years ago, probably. Like one of the poems in particular was written last century. So, I mean, it's so weird when I say that.
Right, you're not that old.
Well, actually, I am. I graduated from college last century. So,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. So, but I mean, the main thing was to be very honest about it. I wanted to be published, and I had written a certain volume of poetry and wanted to kind of see, is there a collection here? Is there something I can put together that each poem could stand on its own, but also could pull together around a central theme? And there seemed to be this collection that came together, and it took a bit to kind of figure out which ones really fit and which ones are just like I'm wishing they would fit in there. Damn, right. Because I want to see them in print, but some of them didn't make that cut. But the ones that did ended up in these 3 sections of the collection, the place and time, which is really looking at those some of the hard situations we're living through in this time that we live, and some not so hard, just kind of reflecting on this is where we are in our world in life and where I am in life. And then the next section is, I call it the word barn, and because all of the poems in that section have to do with, they're poems that talk about words, talk about poetry and the importance of making those connections through poetry, and in some cases questioning the value of poetry. So as a poet, you do that to yourself, don't you?
Yeah.
Question, what's the point of this? I'm going to do it anyway, but
yep. So, yeah, we get there, don't we?
We get there in the end. And then the final section is really, it's all about prayer, and well, it's called Presence and Prayer, that third part. And it's about being in that moment, and also there are literally prayers in there, or there are poems about prayer. So, and I think it's an appropriate way to end this collection, because we have to go back to, for me anyway, go back to that place of listening and talking to God, which, there is that poem in there too, how I talk to God.
Yes, so, I remember the first time I read How I Talk to God was in Malcolm Guite's collection, The Word in the Wilderness, right?
Yeah.
And I remember, I didn't know who Kelly Belmonte was at the time. Never heard of her from Adam.
Yeah.
But I remember that poem standing out to me, and just so many powerful images in it. And when I saw your collection, I recognized your name when it came through our submissions process, and I recognized your name. And then as I'm reading through the collection, that poem was in there, and I got so excited. I was like, yes.
Yeah.
And so I was very glad that my colleagues were in agreement that we could publish this and just help it reach a broader audience, because there are images in these poems that really help you concretely understand something about God and about the world and that give grace and peace to the hearers. And I think that's really important. I think it's a nurturing voice that is necessary when we're all feeling bewildered by what can feel overwhelmed. And it just kind of, it doesn't give us an answer. It gives us a way of viewing the world that then we can carry with us
Mhm.
and maybe go and do likewise. Like, I really hope that there are people who are inspired to write poetry
Mm.
or to write prayers in response to this. And
Yeah.
I think there may be because they're able to receive something. And
I hope
it's just,
so.
it feels very timely.
Yeah, I hope so. I have heard that people who've read the How I Talk to God, and sometimes it's read in a group setting or whatever, but then they go and write their own version of How I Talk to God, which I think is just wonderful.
Right. I mean, to me, that's the highest compliment.
Yeah.
If I have written something that inspires someone else to go pick up their pen and write,
Hmm.
I feel like that piece of work has done something.
Done
Like,
its job.
I want yeah, exactly. I want other people to not only enjoy it, but to
Mm,
participate in it and to
yeah.
go do the same thing for themselves. And
Yeah.
because honestly, I feel like I get more out of the writing of my poetry than anybody could possibly get in the reading of it because it feels like a gift to me first.
Hmm.
And so the fact that they could then go and receive something on their own is an exciting thought to me.
Yeah.
All right, well, to close us out, would you read us another couple poems from your collection?
Sure. You know what? I Give me a second and I will find Slow Me Down.
Hmm.
Okay. So this poem, Slow Me Down, is a found poem lifted from the pages of Walking on Water by Madeline L'Engle. So it seems appropriate. Slow Me Down. A covered bridge in autumn, the silent dying of the green pie apple tree. Slow down and listen. The telling of stories around tribal fires, the drawing of animals on the walls of caves, the death of green in autumn, a recurrent ache in the heart of God. Listen to the silence. Slow me down. Forced to smile, to write, the very vehemence. Stop and listen. Rebellious, I feel reluctant to think. I feel the presumption. Slow me down, Lord.
Hmm. Mm. So good.
Well, those are all her words. So,
I know,
so yay.
but the putting together, like that's one of the things I enjoy about found poems or golden shovels or anything where we get to expound on or condense or show other people what we've discovered
Yeah,
from somebody else's words, but oh, here I see a thread of beauty running here that you may not have noticed, and it's just lovely.
thank you. And this poem, A Bell in the Word Barn, is from the Word Barn, which is a lovely place near me in New Hampshire, actually.
So it's an actual place.
It's an actual barn. There's an actual rooster outside, and there's chickens, and yeah, it's a real barn, and they have various events, a lot of music, and then occasionally they'll do some poetry reading. Yeah,
Oh, that's so
wonderful.
cool.
Yeah,
It sounds like a very fun place to be.
yeah, it's great. A bell in the word barn, illumination at a poetry reading. A barn full of words and whimsy, wooden beams and beer. The rooster crows at just the moment to save us all from drowning in ourselves. We laugh, and I think poets are strange. But then again, so are preachers and politicians, all so sure of their words, so sure they can turn your cheek with a verb, a command, some new take on truth. But we were proof positive, weren't we? Frozen in our chairs, moved yet unmoving, as words hung in the air and the chime rang. 3 times.
Mm. I'll snap for that.
Thanks for the snappy.
Kelly, would you read another poem for us?
Okay, let's see. The walk after the feast. The walk after the feast, boots on hard ground, cold tipped nose peeking from scarf. Maybe it will snow. Let's cut bittersweet as we walk past pumpkins gone soft. Let's talk about nothing. Red berries hang from silver limbs over thin ice. We never noticed them before from the car.
So good. It's so good. All right. I think we have time for one more. Let's do one more.
One more poem?
One more poem.
Okay. This is one of my favorites, A New Year's Lament. I mourn the way we once marked passages by distance rather than time, how we measured miles instead of minutes, felt the fleeting nature of our very selves instead of seconds. Now the calendar is a compass, holding distance with a stopwatch, marking the new year as a newborn, making sunrise inferior to the alarm clock. No offense to the day or year, but I fear we become less real the more we wait for a date to stop, to start, to live.
Hmm. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Well, I have a couple popcorn questions before we leave.
Okay.
Do you have a favorite word?
I would say any iteration of the word, any version of the word thanks. And the reason why it kind of goes back to G.K. Chesterton.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you're familiar with him at all, but he, as a young man, he was brought back to faith. He was sort of in a rocky spot where his faith was concerned. And he says he was brought back to faith by, quote, a thin thread of thanks, unquote. Yeah.
Oh, that's really neat.
Thanks.
I like that. That is a good word. Thank
A
you.
good word.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
What are the tools that you usually use to write poetry?
A few things. I mean, usually, literally, I'm using the laptop most of the time. I'm a pretty fast typist. Grateful for my high school typing class for that. Thank you very much. Sometimes pen and paper, but I also use prompts a lot, whatever the prompts may be. And I use the constraint of time quite often because I'm very busy. So I'll be like, okay, what can I write in the margins here? I'm going to give myself 10 minutes and time myself, and then I'll, write around that.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, it works pretty well.
Yeah. Yeah, I would imagine so. Like just knowing like you have this small window of time, I would imagine that there's something about adding boundaries and constraints that opens up creativity, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's really neat. Who are some off the beaten path poets you love?
I really love Frank Gaspar's Late Rapturous. And I haven't read much of his other poems or collections, but he has a wonderful collection called Late Rapturous, which I go back to frequently. Bill Waters and Ben Ga are a couple haiku poets that I've met online. And actually, I met Ben Ga in person at a poetry reading. And so they're wonderful. Justin Ham is a great Midwestern poet that I've come to really appreciate. And then a couple, well, female poets. I realize I'm talking all male poets right now, but Marge Piercy and Jane Kenyon are both strong influences for me, as well as Mary Oliver, but she's not very much off the beaten path.
Right. Yeah,
I think
she's more beaten path, I
she's
think.
beaten path. I mean, it's like if I said Robert Frost or whatever, I
Right,
get
right.
totally beaten.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, still an excellent poet and
Yeah.
like, yeah, a favorite for sure. But yeah, we do enjoy things that are off the beaten path, and so we're
Yeah.
always curious to hear who do we not know about. And I think apart from Jane Kenyon, all of these are new names to me. So
Okay.
I have new people to go look up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Kelly, it has been just a joy to have you on the Banderpod today. Thank you for taking the time.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Listeners, be looking for the release of Kelly's book, The Mother of All Words, from Bandersnatch Books on April 1st, the beginning of National Poetry Month. You can order it through bandersnatchbooks.com, through your local independent bookstore, or that other place online where people get books. Well, friends, may you all find bookish treasures in your wanderings off the beaten path. Thanks for listening in to our conversation today on the Banderpod. We hope you'll check out our full catalog at bandersnatchbooks.com. The Banderpod is produced by Rachel S. Donahue, A.B. Donahue, and Carolyn Claire Givens. Audio engineering by S.D.G. Morgan. Artwork by Evelyn Warnamundi. Many thanks to our friend Chris Slayton of Son of Laughter for our theme song, Cricket in a Jar. Find links and more in the show notes.